It is Christmas Eve. How many of you are going to open at least one present this evening? Really, only a few of you. How many? It's all tomorrow. All right, it's all tomorrow. How many of you are like, I don't know, I don't even know what day it is. I forgot to shop. Hopefully that's not you. Yeah, I love this time of year. I love Christmas Eve service. It's the time for us to get together and remember what Christmas really is all about. And over this last month, we've been doing something a little unusual for Christmas. We've been looking at the Old Testament promises and prophecies about the Messiah who was to come, and how at Christmas all of those have been fulfilled. And most of them have been around this topic of redemption. Because when God created the world, He created a perfect world, and He created a perfect us. And we came on the scene, and what did we do? All right, messed it up. Now, I don't know, how many of you ever had Lincoln Logs when you were a kid? Yeah. Maybe if you didn't have Lincoln Logs, you certainly had Legos, or those little blocks, right, with the letters and numbers on them. And you would build something, right? And if you had siblings, that was a moment when death was at everyone's doorstep. Because you would build something, and what inevitably would happen? They'd come in and kick it down and think they were doing you a favor. And then when you beat them for it, you were the one who got in trouble. I'm not speaking from experience or anything. I was the one usually coming in and kicking it over because I was the oldest. But that's exactly what we did, right? God created this perfect universe and world that He gave us, and we just knocked it over. And ever since then, God has been trying to get us back to that original state. And we're going to talk about this evening how at Christmas that actually happens. So instead of going to the Old Testament, we're going to transition over to the New Testament. Now, if you have your Bibles, grab them. We're going to turn to John chapter 1. Now, I know that's not the typical Christmas Eve passage. We're supposed to be reading from Luke chapter 2. Don't worry, we'll get there. But I want to show how John connects us to the beginning of the story. Right? So before we read in great detail, what are the first three words of John chapter 1? In the beginning. Does that sound familiar? Where do we read those three words? Genesis 1:1, in the beginning. And now, when we read the Genesis account, and you can either take my word for it or you can check me out, right? It says, in the beginning, God. So you had this main character who is God, right? Okay, some of you are paying attention. God was there, nothing else was there. So God pre-exists everything that's around. We're not going to get into a science conversation. You can hit me up at the new year if you want to have that conversation. Take me out to lunch and we can have it. Right? So in the very beginning there was God, and then He says what He did. What did He do? In the beginning God created. He created the heavens and the earth. And then the rest of that passage goes through each day of creation. But at the very beginning, God spoke everything into existence. In fact, He said, let there be light, and there was light. So there's three big themes at the beginning of this whole story of this perfect world that we created. You had God who is creating and giving us light. You got those three things? All right, now let's go to John chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through Him, and nothing was created except through Him. The Word gave life to everything that was created, and His life brought light to everyone. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. Did you see the three elements here? The same three elements as you get at the very beginning of all of creation. In the beginning, it says in Genesis, in the beginning, who? God. Now, it's a little different here. What does it say? In the beginning, the Word already existed. That word, that's a funny way of saying it, but I keep trying to figure out how to do it, and I can't. That word in the Greek means logos. And logos means the spoken word. There are other Greek words that mean like the written word, but this is the spoken word, the word that you hear. And what happens next? All right, and you get this, the word was with God and the word was God. So who are we talking about here? God. Now specifically, who is John referring to? Jesus. So what's he saying? Jesus is God. In fact, he says it very clearly. He was God. He was with God. He existed in the very beginning with God. And God did what? Created everything through him. Nothing was created unless it was created through him. So in Genesis 1, you have God creating everything. In John, you have God, Jesus, who did what? Created everything. And then the big thing, he says the Word gave life to everything, and his life brought what? Light to everyone. And that light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. What is John trying to make us understand? Jesus has been there from the very beginning. He is God. He was in the creation process, and he brings light to us. Now, he's creating something new out of the thing that was broken. Instead of the old thing, right, the broken world that we have, he's creating something brand new in us and through us. He is God. He was with God through that whole promise. And he is our creator. Let's go to Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 says this. Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. So what's one reason that Jesus came? To show us what God looks like and how he acts. He's the visible representation of a God who we can't see. He existed before anything was created, and he is supreme over all creation. For through him, God created everything in the heavenly realms and on earth. It's very similar to what we just read, isn't it? He made the things we can see and the things we can't, such as thrones, kingdoms, rulers, and authorities in the unseen world. Everything was created through him and for him. He existed before anything else, and I love this phrase, and he holds all creation together. Everything that we have was created through Christ, for Christ, and is held together by Christ. Isn't that awesome? All right, but he doesn't finish there. He talks about this light of the world. What do we know about light? Light expels darkness. In a minute, we're going to light a whole bunch of candles. You got candles on your seats. We're going to make this room as dark as we can for 4:30 in the afternoon. And what's going to happen? We're going to start with a dark room, but as we continue to light candles, what's going to happen? It's going to get lighter. The darkness is going to be pushed back. And Jesus is the light of the world who came into the world to give us this light. 2 Corinthians 4:7 says this. Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. You see, we don't go around preaching about ourselves. We preach that Jesus Christ is Lord, and we ourselves are your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said what? Let there be light in the darkness. That harkens all the way back to that beginning story again. Has made this light shine in our hearts so that we could know the glory of God that is seen in the face of Jesus Christ. We now have this light shining in our hearts, but we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing this great treasure. This makes it clear that our great power is from God, not from ourselves. In the beginning, the entire universe was dark, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was. From the moment we fell, there has been darkness in our hearts, but Jesus Christ came and said what? Let there be light. Not just around us, but in us. He is the light of the world. And you don't have to take my word for it. That's what Jesus called himself in John 8. He said, Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, I am the light of the world. Who's saying that? Jesus says, if you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you will have the light that leads to life. Anyone ever been in a really dark room? Like pitch black? Oh, you know what the pitchest black I've ever seen? Or not seen? I don't know which it is. Anyone ever been to the Cave of the Winds? And you go deep into those caves and they turn the lights off. We went with our kids. You got to warn your kids about that moment. Because there's dark and then there's dark. And that is dark. It doesn't matter how long you're there, your eyes never adjust. And God is saying, Jesus is saying, you don't have to walk in that kind of darkness because He shines that light into our hearts and into our lives. He is the light of the world. But He doesn't stop there, because in Matthew 5, He says this, you are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Remember that song from Sunday school? Hide it under a bushel? No. Yes, you all know that. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. He is the light of the world. That light is in us. And what are we supposed to do with that light? We're supposed to hoard it and keep it to ourselves. Now, what are we supposed to do? Share it. Share it with the world and pass the light around so that the light isn't just in us, but it's in everyone. Now, at this point, you may be thinking, Pastor, that's okay, but that's not Christmas. You haven't mentioned Christmas yet. I beg to differ. I think everything I've talked about is Christmas. Because what Christmas is about, and I think we get this weird idea, right? There's a lot of things we think about when we think about Christmas. What are some of the things you think about when you think about Christmas? Family? Trees, right? We got a tree in the back right there. And all the garland and the lights. Anyone gone light watching this year? Man, there's some crazy people out there. And I can't imagine the phone bill. Or the phone bill? The light bill. Or the phone bill. Neighbors telling you, turn those lights off. Right? We got a couple down by in our neighborhood, and I'm telling you, they are bright. And